Ever since the end of the Star Wars sequel trilogy, a lot of fans have remained divided. We have a lot of fans that support the sequels and Kathleen Kennedy's vision, and we also have the majority which really disagree with, of course, everything that Kathleen Kennedy has done with the Star Wars franchise. And that really has created a big separation between the fandom. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future Star Wars updates. Also, by the way, guys, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support. It is greatly appreciated. Now, one thing that we do know about everything of what's been going on with George Lucas's involvement as of late with the new Star Wars shows is that he's taking a lot of fan favorite elements from Star Wars Legends, but looking at what has been going on with shows out there like the Ahsoka Tano series and how Dave Filoni is making sure that it's going to be very strong with the Force, as he stated a couple of months ago, meaning that this show is all about the mythology, right? And that brings us to exactly how this is going to involve George Lucas and what Daisy Ridley, the actress who portrayed Rey, had to say about everything related to his initial plan for the sequel trilogy that got sabotaged by Kathleen Kennedy at no surprise. Now, the one thing that we do know about the sequels is that there were a lot of scenes, a lot of plans also, that got deleted and were left on the cutting room floor, never to see the light of day. And George Lucas had a big problem with that. And it's one of the main reasons, by the way, as to why he did not appear at the world premiere of The Rise of Skywalker, right? There were a lot of big problems between George and Kathleen and exactly what was happening with all of that. So, on to the biggest thing here of all, alright? On top of all of this is that with George Lucas getting ready and actively involved with the Star Wars franchise with John and Dave by his side, he is also coming up with monumental changes to the brand by implementing new types of Star Wars lore that has already been approved to be used by Disney. However, in a recent interview that Daisy Ridley got involved in, she went on to reveal something specific of how Disney and Kathleen Kennedy betrayed George for his plan of the sequel trilogy's end. Now, Daisy Ridley eventually went on to state the following. In the middle of shooting, we began to have George on set overlooking everything, and we were starting to do reshoots at the time. There was a time where Disney had accepted one of George's ideas for how Palpatine survived in the sequels, was that he was to have survived the fall on the second Death Star, where the explosion opened up a wormhole to the world of Exegol through the world between worlds that transported Palpatine to that world. Now, I want to stop here quick for a second of what Daisy Ridley is saying, is that this matches the leaks that we talked about over, 3 years ago, where there was supposed to be an explanation about some kind of wormhole from just above the surface of the forest moon of Endor, basically the Death Star 2, and how Palpatine essentially got teleported through the use of a wormhole from one location to the other, and that the conduit was the world between worlds. George wanted to implement something very heavy and inspired from Dave Filoni in Episode 9. As the final film at the time of the Skywalker saga, right? And this, of course, was the plan during the reshoots. They were working on the scene. Ian McDiarmid was heavily involved on working on a scene where Palpatine explains how he survived, and Daisy goes into this more, so we'll talk about that in a second. Now, you guys may recall that Ian McDiarmid himself said that there is so much Palpatine footage that got deleted that it could have made a movie in and of itself, almost, he said. That's how much footage of Palpatine they shot that got either shifted around or deleted or only partially shot here and there. There was a lot of stuff that they worked on, and a lot of which also was alluding to Matt Smith also being portrayed as a young version of Palpatine as a clone. That also got canceled. But on to the next biggest thing here is what Daisy Ridley has to say about how Kathleen Kennedy went about sabotaging George Lucas's plan to use this as the explanation of Palpatine's survival, instead of Palpatine just coming back as a clone, because George felt that Palpatine coming back as a clone was a little too obvious and a little too simple. He wanted a bigger twist to it all, right? So on to the next thing. She goes on to say, this was going to be all explained in the story, and we even had shot the scene in which Ian provided excellent lines of dialogue about entering and escaping a certain realm that led him to Exegol. Lucas felt that this was a more original plan or twist than just Palpatine being a clone. Now, Lucas, of course, treated this as a big homage and wanted to use some of Filoni's ideas for the final film, and that this was going to be the big homage. However, Kathleen Kennedy felt that George's ideas were not going to work well with the community and decided to delete this scene that he worked so hard on for roughly 2 whole months with us. It almost literally happened. We partially shot the thing and everything. Kennedy's defense was that Palpatine explaining how he died was too cartoony, and George felt offended by all of that. Now let me pause here for a second. Now, I think that Palpatine being a clone wasn't all that bad at the end of the day. I mean, I love Dark Empire as much as any hardcore fan out there does. By the way, that's a comic book line where Palpatine comes back as a clone. I like that idea, it's just that they never explained how he came back in the movie, which I thought was a big failure. They had to use it in a novelization, and a lot of people did not read that novelization. There's a lot of fans to this day that still don't know how Palpatine survived. Can you imagine that? Just let that sink in. There's a lot of fans out there, mainly casual fans, that have no idea how Palpatine came back in Episode 9. You know, people that don't watch the videos on YouTube, or people that don't read the books, stuff like that, have absolutely no clue. And I know a lot of people that don't have a clue. So it really is a big problem. So overall, that's another thing that George had a problem with, by the way, and why he did not attend the premiere, was because Palpatine's survival was not explained. And he felt that that was going to be a very big, you know, controversial thing about the movie, but it ended up not being all that controversial because it kind of just left fans wondering, and wondering time and time again when it was going to be pointed out, and it never was. Only that, you know, Palpatine states that I have died before, you know, about the whole dark side thing, and, you know, how it's unnatural. He delivers that line of dialogue from Revenge of the Sith. That basically kind of just mystified his survival, and they layered it on that. So Daisy puts this out there, that yes, there was a plan to have Palpatine surviving through the use of a wormhole, where that explosion that you see, that actual energy that you see, was supposed to be retconned as him entering into the world between worlds, getting dragged through that realm into another portal that led him to Exegol, somehow, some way. That seems more like it would be an accident rather than an initial plan. So overall, I mean, they both have their ups and downs, right? So I would like to hear what you all have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Night to moon.